Hello everybody, welcome to the patch 13.3 review. This patch, like every patch lately, is a special one that you guys are going to have to pay attention to. Why? Because Riot seems to have put a lot of errors into these patch notes, so I need to look through them very deliberately. I need to look through any errors or anything they're doing wrong, because a lot of these patch notes, they actually wrote the wrong thing. I waited a long time because I needed them to actually fix their patch notes. I needed them to patch their patch notes because so many things were wrong. They had things like cooldowns were written as mana. They had the wrong numbers. They had some buffs that still even now aren't shown, and it's extremely ambiguous. It's unclear if the buff is actually going live or not. So why is this? I'm hoping that this isn't just the new normal, but this is due to the social engineering attack. Now, if any of you have been paying attention to my videos, which I hope you have because my videos are great, I did lose my power for 3 days last week, and that's really put me off. I haven't really had that many videos, and some of them were lower quality, but I hope you guys have still managed to enjoy them because, you know, that's what I do. But so I had the social engineering attack. They were hacked. The last patch wasn't actually a patch. It was a hotfix. A lot of the item tooltips were terrible, things like that. The RE visual update was delayed. Furries everywhere were crying out in pain. So now we have the Aurelion Soul rework is going live. The RE rework is going live. We have nerfs and buffs to a lot of different champions. So we're going to try to get through this and have fun with it. So we have nerfs to Annie, Amumu, Kassadin, Kusante, and Zac. I thought Annie was being buffed, not nerfed. We have buffs to Alistair, Bram, Jarvin, Kale, Kane, LeBlanc, Nautilus, Pike, Rakan, Thresh, and Chundle. Aurelion Soul is getting a complete rework on his entire champion. They also delayed, did they delay? I think they either delayed or didn't. I mean, so these are the new skins. If the skins aren't listed, they're not coming out. So first up is the Aurelion Soul rework. I'm not going to go through it, but he is getting a complete rework. If you want to see the Aurelion Soul rework, there's other videos that go through it, but it would be way too much for me to go through that right now. Like I'd be spending like 20 minutes of a patch video on it. I'm pretty sure you guys don't want me to be spending 20 minutes just going through the Aurelion Soul rework, but it's a big one. The champion is completely reworked from the ground up. Okay. Amumu is being nerfed. The Q mana cost is going up by 5, and the damage on his tantrum is going down by 15. Well, 15 to... It's going down by 15 at rank 1, up by 5 at rank 5. So I think what they're trying to do is discourage... So what are they saying here? We adjusted Amumu at the start of last season so the sad mommy could find some friends with the new jungle companions. Oh, before I get any further in this, I want to remind everyone you can put me on your second monitor. You can just listen to me, use me as a podcast, you know, stuff like that. People do that all the time. I go through these videos and I show you anything, so you can watch me on your main and you can, you know, look at me and do all that. But if you don't, you know, if you're a busy person or you're a multitasker, if you just want someone on the TV so it feels like you have people nearby while you look at your phone, right? You can do that too. So make sure to like, make sure to leave a comment on anything you're doing here. Remember, liking helps me significantly. Anyway, we adjusted Amumu at the start of last season so the sad mommy could find friends with the new jungle companions. However, he seems to have found a few too many friends to build jungle and support, so we're nerfing and bro roles. So Amumu's support has kind of been his default way to play, and despite the fact that they're buffing old tank supports, they seem to be nerfing Amumu support. So his Q mana cost is going up, and his tantrum damage is going down until rank 5. Now that seems to be to hit his early game jungle clear. That seems to be able to hit his jungle, his support, trading, all in, stuff like that. So basically, they're just trying to nerf him everywhere. It's not any one role in particular. They're just trying to make him worse. That's it. They're just trying to nerf him. Now they did say Annie is being nerfed, which I find very confusing because when I looked through these, it did not look like she was being nerfed. In fact, they're even starting with Annie's been struggling to pick up wins. So are they saying she's nerfed? This is listed under nerfs. Okay, that doesn't, they're wrong, actually. And this is why I'm saying that you need to pay close attention to this patch because Annie's not being nerfed, just to be clear. Annie is not being nerfed. The shield strength on her shield is going up considerably. 20 more at rank 1. At rank 5 it equals out, but because you max this ability last. But then the AP ratio is going up considerably from a 0.35 AP ratio to a 0.55 AP ratio. The cooldown is also going down by 2 seconds flat from 14 to 10 to 12 to 8. So she will just use way more shields and they will be much stronger. In addition, the retaliation damage for hitting the shield... Right now, every time you auto-attack Annie, you take damage back. Instead, what it will be is every time you damage Annie, you take damage back, but only once per shield. However, the shield on her and on Tibbers counts as 2 different shields. So if you were to AoE Annie and Tibbers at the same time, you take double the damage. Now the retaliation damage, 30 to 90 with a 0.4 AP ratio, not that considerable if you just hit like one Annie shield. It's not really that big a deal. But if you hit her and the Tibbers shield, I'm not saying it's going to be like, pow, but it'll like, you'll notice it. You'll be like, ooh, wow, that actually stung a little. So if there's one thing you want to learn about these patch notes, if there's one thing you want to be adjusted by, make sure that you don't AoE her and Tibbers, or just do it anyway, because it's not going to be like, you're not going to like be one shot, but you will notice a little bit. Tibbers itself is getting an AP ratio on the amount of health it has, and its resistances are also getting an AP ratio. And then its movement speed is going up at rank 2 and 3. So in no way is this a nerf at all. In no way is this a nerf, just to be clear. Jarvin is getting his base armor up by 2. His golden Aegis is getting its cooldown reduced a little from 9 to 8. And then the flat shield. So the shield per target is still going to have a health ratio. But the flat shield is going to have an AD ratio of 0.8. So that's actually a pretty good buff. That means that if you just shield and hit one person, you'll get a good AD shield. If you shield and hit like 3 or 4 people, you get a health shield. I mean, it won't be a considerable. It's only like 1.5% health right now. So even if you shield and hit like 3 people, you only get like a 4.5% health shield, which is completely insignificant. Overall, this will just help Jarvin be tankier, and it'll also help him do like a bruiser build a bit more. The armor will help in his jungle clear. The golden Aegis cooldown reduction will help him in jungle clear. The shield duration is going down from 5 to 4. That's still a very long duration, and in Modern League, there's absolutely no way that like if you're attacking, there's no way you don't break that in 5. You'll break it in like your first hit, just to be clear. Kosante is getting nerfed pretty hard, but they did sneak in a buff here that I do think will help him a little bit. So his health growth is going from 108 to 114. That helps his Lakey mount a little. And this champion is a scaling pick. So I'm not sure if this is going to like be enough to offset the nerfs. But getting 100 more HP at level 18 does mean that as a scaling pick, he'll do a little bit more. The nerfs are pretty substantial though. His Q3 knockup duration is going from 1 second to 0.65 seconds. The stun duration is going from 1 to 1.25 seconds to 1 second. So his Q will be far more affected by tenacity. And in addition to that, it will just stun straight less. Now, it said it was a 1 second stun no matter what. So I'm wondering if there was like a hidden thing, like if you ranked it up if it stunned for longer, or if it just randomly stunned for longer. I'm not sure, because the tooltip just said 1 second, and I did not notice at all. I never noticed that the stun duration was longer than 1 second, so I'm not really sure what's going on in that. The minimum stun duration is W, so if you just tap W and he just charges into people real quick, that stun duration is going from 0.35 to 0.75 to 0.3 to 0.5. So it's a nerf at rank 1 and a pretty hard nerf at rank 5. If you fully charge it, you still get the longer stun duration. Now the nerf that will probably hurt this champion considerably and lower his win rate out of the world is his all out whenever he ultimate. He used to lose 65% of bonus resistances. He will now lose 85% of bonus resistances. So this nerfs him really, 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 really bad. And although Kosante was doing good in competitive games, in solo queue, he was not really doing that amazing. He was doing okay at like the highest of the highest ranks into Challenger, but he wasn't really doing that amazing anywhere else. So I thought I thought these nerfs would be good. The stun duration, the knockup duration, the minimum stun duration. Like I thought these nerfs were going to be pretty good, and these nerfs would definitely hurt the champion enough. Apparently Riot wanted to utterly like make him like he will literally be squishier than an assassin. Like, let me be clear. If he has 200 bonus resistances, so if he's at 300 armor, he will only get 15 armor per 100 armor. So he'll only get 30 armor from having 200 bonus armor. In other words, an assassin or even a bruiser whose only defensive item is Death's Dance will actually be tankier than Kosante in his ultimate. This makes him extremely, extremely, extremely squishy. Basically, he's going to ult and just sort of get one shot. Like, he'll ult, the AD carry, like a misfortune, will turn around and auto attack Q, and he'll die. So this is pretty substantial. But the health growth kind of maybe sort of offsets that. They added that like a lot. I was saying that these nerfs were going to kill the champion completely, but then they added this buff. So I'm not 100% because this kind of came out of nowhere, and I didn't have enough time to think about whether or not this health buff will affect him that much. I don't know. I can't say for sure. I do know that I don't think he'll be viable in solo queue anymore. He might still be viable into like challenger, but I don't think he's going to be viable in solo queue anymore. I'll say that much. Kassadin continues to. There's another change during the Kassadin later I'll talk about, but basically Riot seems to like the idea that Kassadin is this like hyper late scaling champion that counters every single AP champion. They don't seem to really want to stop that. So the nerf for Kassadin is he gets a little bit less damage on his early game Force Pulse, but the cooldown from a nearby cast is going from 1 second to 0.75 seconds. So for those of you who haven't been keeping track, instead of his E storing up to 6 ability uses and then he can use it, it now has a normal cooldown that is reduced whenever anyone casts an ability. So the amount that it gets reduced is going from 1 second to 0.75 seconds. This should probably stop him from getting 2 casts of Force Pulse in a rapid succession. I don't think there's basically any way he can do that anymore. It does mean he can continue to Force Pulse throughout a fight, he just shouldn't be able to get 2 in rapid succession. It also hurts his early game a little bit. His ultimate is having its flat damage reduced. Right now it's 80 to 120. It will now be 70 to 110. The scaling is completely unchanged, but the damage per stack then is also obviously going down. So his base damage is going down a little bit. So Kassadin hopefully maybe doesn't get those early game kills that he always seems to pick up. I suspect he still will because his AP ratios are so high that what Riot doesn't seem to want to acknowledge is that his AP ratios are so high that even if all he's done is build like 100 AP, even if all he does is have like one item, his AP ratios are so massive that even one item cast in with 100 AP will start churning out so many AP ratios that his low base damage won't really matter that much. It does help that they're trying to affect him, but the issue is he's an AP mid laner who counters AP mid laners, meaning every AP mid laner needs to counter Kassadin. He's like the Fiora of mid lane, but even worse because he's deliberately designed to counter AP champions. It'd be like if there was an ADC who countered ADCs and went bot lane, and then for 12 years everyone countered the ADC countering ADC, and Riot is like, if we nerf their early game a little bit, will that affect them? And you're like, no, fundamentally, they're broken. They're busted. Like, it's an ADC that counters ADCs. That's broken. And that's how I feel about Kassadin. Okay, Kale is one of these changes that I'm not really sure what's happening here. They say passive bonus move speed increased, E on hit AP scaling increased, missing health damage increased. Now, does anyone notice what's wrong here? The missing health damage increased isn't listed here. So, is this right? Or is this right? I don't know. Did they forget to list that she has a missing health damage increase? Or is this just out of date? Because from what I know, they write these up after they see the patch notes. So this would have to be written up seeing the patch note, but then the patch note doesn't list it. So my guesstimation is the buff is still going live, and they literally just forgot to put it here when they were like finalizing changes or like putting it into like code or something like that to like put it in online. I don't know. So I can't know. I think my gut feeling is that she's still getting the buff to the missing health damage on her Starfire Spellblade. At either rate, the bonus move speed she gets from her passive is going from 8% to 10%. I actually don't like this change because any change that makes Kale more capable of permakiting is probably bad for the game. She can already permakite pretty easily with her Q slow, her W movement speed buff, her passive movement speed buff. A lot of champions like Darius and Garen, etc. were already too hard countered by her. But the downside here is that it doesn't do anything to counter champions who can jump on top of her. Not really. So it's a buff that makes her good matchups even better, and it makes her bad matchups unaffected, right? Now, this is another change I actually don't like, but this is the one I don't like the most. They're buffing the AP ratio on her E from a 0.2 to a 0.25 AP ratio. That is a considerable amount of AP ratio increase. 0.05 per auto attack is a lot. Now, I know Kale has been struggling, but I don't think buffing her in a way that just makes her scale way, way harder. Like, Kale was already a scaling pick. Don't let Kale scale. That's kind of been a thing. Kale players can meme about it, but at the end of the day, Nashor's Tooth Kale, particularly with like a Riftmaker, was and is scaling quite well, making her scale even better. Once again, makes those matchups that can't really counter her even worse. Well, it doesn't really do much for the matchups where she can't really ever play the game. So this, in my opinion, is bad. Now, they were going to rebuff her E, the active, because right now it does 8 to 10% missing health damage. They were going to rebuff it a little bit to 8 to 12% missing health damage, so 2 more percent missing health damage at rank 5. But that's not listed here, and is that, I don't know. Kane is getting a double buff, which I'm always afraid of double buffs, because when you buff a champion's damage and then you buff the multiplier on their damage, it tends to kind of go out of control really hard. So with Kane, Assassin Kane is getting a buff to his passive damage, because of course you need to buff every champion's damage. Buffing survivability would be bad for the game, because that would mean that the durability update ever did anything. Buffing every assassin's damage is good for the game, because then that makes assassin players go serotonin levels, and it makes the game slowly shittier until they have to do a durability update. So Assassin Kane is getting his passive unnerfed back to where it used to be. Instead of 13 to 14% bonus damage, you will now get 15 to 45% bonus damage. In addition, the AD ratio on his Q is going up a lot. And they're not even doing the flat damage nerf on it. So instead of a 0.65 bonus AD ratio, it will now be a 0.8 bonus AD ratio. That is a very large. Remember that doubles because it hits twice. So instead of getting a, 1.3 AD ratio per Q, you will now get a 1.6 AD ratio per Q. That is a very, very large buff, and I'm not sure that Riot is really thinking this one through. Even if Assassin Kane wasn't that amazing, this is a very, very, very big buff. I'm not really sure on this one, Riot. LeBlanc is getting a buff, but it's old mana, so her mana regen is going up, her mana regen growth is going up, her Q mana cost is going down, and her ultimate, this is a good, well, I don't know if you want to call it good, but I don't ever want LeBlanc buffed, because I think that champion tends to always be buffed to dominate pro play, while not doing that much for anything else. So her cooldown on her ultimate is going down, 60 to 30 seconds cooldown on her ult, 50 to 30 seconds cooldown after the buff. So 10 less seconds cooldown at rank 1, 5 seconds less cooldown at rank 2, and then the same at rank 3. So I really don't like LeBlanc buffs, because every time she's even remotely viable, she just immediately at the high ranks dominates the game completely, becomes like a top 3 pick. Everyone needs to counter pick her. She just destroys every melee pick, etc., etc. Lee Sin is getting a damage buff, because of course he is. I mean, Riot literally doesn't know how to do anything but buff damage. After 12 years, they've decided his Q damage is just too low. Who knew that for 12 years, his Q damage was too low? So the AD ratio is being buffed from a 1.0 AD ratio to a 1.1 AD ratio. Yes, that is a lot. That is a lot of AD. Yep. Then his Tempest Cripple is also getting its damage buffs, because of course it is. It will now scale on total AD, not bonus AD. So at rank 1, it does about the same damage, but as you continue to level up throughout the game, your base AD will then go into your E, and you'll continuously deal more damage throughout the game. So at level 2+, this is a buff to his cripple damage. I think it's even a buff at level 1, but I don't actually know the numbers. Either way, Lee Sin will deal more damage, because that was Lee Sin's problem. He just wasn't dealing enough damage. Wasn't anything else. It was just he just needs more damage. Trundle is being buffed. His W Frozen Domain is going down in cooldown. It used to be 14 to 10. He got nerfed to 18 to 14. Now it will be 16 to 12. I think Trundle will still be terrible. Nothing else to say. Not really an impactful buff. Just seems to be one of those, oh god, Trundle's doing terrible, but we hate that champion. Give him a little buff. Like, Riot's like, not anime enough. Not like a hyper late game assassin. We don't give a shit. Zac is being nerfed, although this one was kind of foreseeable. What was this, like a year and a half ago? I don't know. They buffed his unstable matter they literally doubled its AP ratio. And I was sitting there, you guys can go back and watch my video if you don't believe me. I was like, that's a bad idea. They shouldn't do that. And then, shockingly, that was a bad idea, and they shouldn't have done that. So they're nerfing the AP ratio on his W. Then they're also nerfing the AP ratio on his E, because why not, I guess, right? So now, Demonic Embrace Zac will hopefully kill people less, Zach was one of those champions who people didn't really like playing him, and I'll tell you why people don't like playing him. Because pressing W W W W W W W W W W on the jungle minions is really lame and unfun, and I don't enjoy it. Just sitting there, just W W W W W W next camp W W W W W W W next camp W W. It's not fun. It's not fun to do. It's really tedious and really annoying. I don't like it at all. Radiant Virtue is getting giga nerfed because Riot has not destroyed every tank item in the game. There's still 2 left that they haven't nerfed into the fucking ground. Anytime anyone builds a tank item, Riot's just like, why aren't you building late game assassin? Oh! And so Radiant Virtue is the latest victim of Riot's tanks are the worst mentality. So, oh boy, this is like a quad nerf right here. The total cost is going from 3,000 to 3,200. The cooldown on its effect is going from 60 seconds to 90 seconds. It's not even going down per rank. It's not even going down with ability haste. So as we reach the late game, it will literally have a longer cooldown than most tanks' ultimate into the late game. So I'm not really sure. Like they're not even, they couldn't even throw tanks a bone on that one. Like even late game Ornn ult will actually have a lower cooldown than Radiant Virtue, which is stupid, right? That's just stupid. You should have at least had it made reduced by ability haste or something. Late game Ornn ult cooldown is 100, but with even 11% ability haste, it's lower than 90. So you could have at least made it reduced by ability haste, but you didn't even do that much. So the cooldown is going up, the cost is going up. Now you do gain more health when you activate it. It's going from 10% to 15% health gained. The healing is going down. Basically, the healing was 8 to 16%, but if you're at lower HP, it would heal more. Now it's just going to be 12% flat. That's it. So I guess if you're at full health, it'll heal for more, but it's not often in a team fight as a tank that you were just sitting there at full HP. So if you were even at half HP, this would actually start healing for more. I should say, if you were below half HP, this would heal for more. So I guess if you're a tank tanking no damage, it will heal less. Or sorry, heal more. I don't know what I'm even saying. Basically, the heal got nerfed. The only thing is that the health gain is up. So potentially, like a tank can use this early in a team fight or something, and then try to like keep their health topped off. Maybe that'll be a thing. I don't know. However, then the ability haste, instead of giving 20 ability haste to everyone around you, it's just gone. Nobody gets ability haste anymore. So no ability haste, cooldown up, cost up, but it gives a little bit more health. So all the tanks who are struggling to find any item that was viable will now struggle even harder. Riot has now obliterated Jack Show. They've obliterated Radiant Virtue. Heartsteel was always kind of a meh item to begin with. It's just a funny item, right? So the last item left for Riot to obliterate is Iceborn Gauntlet. Let's see next patch if Riot obliterates Iceborn Gauntlet. Will everyone start flipping over to Iceborn Gauntlet? Will Riot obliterate that one? Find out next time on Riot Hates Tanks. Umbral Glaive is being nerfed, but not nearly enough. The cooldown is being increased from 40 seconds to 50 seconds, but the issue is Umbral Glaive reveals wards, and it just obliterates every ward. So as you might imagine, the problem here, obviously, the problem here is that you can go Umbral Glaive and obliterate every ward. This is a big problem because you can go Umbral Glaive, it automatically reveals a ward, and then you run around, you kill every ward, and then if like 2 or 3 wards are killed, well, the opposing team totally loses control of the map, and then you can still have a sweeper in your inventory to go into another lane and then sweep that, and then wait, because it's only a 50-second cooldown still, it's back. They really wanted to stop this jank-ass Umbral Glaive rush meta, where junglers will often rush Umbral Glaive, or Pike or other champions will rush Umbral Glaive and obliterate all wards on the map. I think the cooldown would need to be increased to like 80 to 90, maybe even like 100, like enough to where like you can't just continuously, anytime you see a ward, oops, pop it. The only real counter to this item seems to be things like ghost wards, because then it'll pop on a ghost ward and then you'll clear something that you could have seen anyway. Other than that, yeah. Ranged champions will only deal 2 damage to a ward instead of 3 now. So if you have Umbral Glaive, you'll kill wards in 2 hits instead of 1. The actual good nerf to this item that will help champions like Teemo, with Umbral Glaive active, you will no longer one-shot traps. You'll deal normal damage to traps. So Teemo Shrooms will no longer be instantly wiped out because a Graves or a Senna happen to walk by revealed a shroom, killed it, walked up, killed another shroom, walked up, killed another shroom. This should mean that champions like Teemo can actually have more time to react to a champion with Umbral Glaive walking by, or they can do funnier things, you know, something. It's a good nerf. It's a good nerf because, yeah, anything to make Teemo better without just making him more broken in the laning phase. Overheal is being buffed, kind of. The shield, instead of being 10 plus 9% maximum health, is 20 to 300 health. They say this is a buff from level 3 onwards. So what they're trying to do is make Overheal into a late game rune. The issue here is that late game ADCs with Overheal and Bloodthirster with literally no defensive items will now start having over 3,000 health, which I'm not sure exactly is where I want my ADCs to be late game, having 3,000 health of anti-burst, because the issue here is what happens when an ADC starts having 3,000 health from the Bloodthirster heal and the Overheal, right? What happens? Riot starts buffing Kane, because suddenly Kane can't kill ADCs. And then everyone says, oh my god, Kane is useless. So Kane gets a giga buff to his damage. And then they make ADCs more survivable. And then they need to buff Lee Sin. And then they need to buff LeBlanc. And they need to buff blah, 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 blah. So it's just not a good idea, in my opinion. It's just not a good idea to continuously buff the survivability of ADCs, particularly when they're already the best class in the game right now. So, yeah. Melee supports are being buffed because basically enchanters are overpowered at the giga high rank, but melee supports generally do fine at the low ranks, so they're buffing melee supports for everyone, which is interesting for sure. Alistar, his passive, instead of being just flat numbers, it will now heal on 5% of his max health for himself, and then heal allies for 6%. Now, I don't think Riot realized the reason it gave double heal to allies was because what would frequently happen to Alistair in the laning phase, particularly at the high ranks, is Alistair would hang back because he doesn't want to get poked, right? But then his ally would run up, and because his ally is 1v2ing, his ally would get poked a lot. So when Alistair double healed onto his allies, it was a good way to be like, hey man, sorry for kind of leaving you 1v2, but at least I can top your health off, right buddy? So I don't know why they're like trying to force the healing to be mostly for Alistar and not for his ally. I think that feels better for Alistar for sure. Like that, like it feels better for an Alistar to be restoring 5% of his health over and over. But the issue is the entire reason this wasn't done just like arbitrarily. They didn't just give allies double healing because they woke up one day and they were like, screw it, double healing for allies. They like, did this quite deliberately to help an issue, which is level 1, level 2, and even into the later game, Alistair literally cannot help his ally. If you're up against Ashe Zyra, or if you're up against like Ashe Jhin, or you know any of these sorts of combos, Alistair's ally is just going to get continuously poked, and the only thing Alistair can do really is go, sorry buddy, here's a lot of healing. And it was a lot of healing over time, but now it's not going to be. So I'm not really sure, to be honest, what Riot's doing with this one. The 6% of his max health is healing for allies will scale pretty good throughout a game though. I'm not quite sure Riot knows what they're doing with this one. If I'm going to be blunt, I think they're kind of making a mistake. As a whole, these Alistair buffs are pretty brutal. Yeah. Particularly in team fights, this means that every time an enemy dies, Alistair will heal his entire team by 5% of his, heal him 5% of his health, then heal his allies for 6% of his health. So, like, in a team fight, this seems to be very snowbally, because if you're winning a team fight, Alistair just goes, bleh, 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 and then it'll be the old feeling of, you know, like a Death Dance or like a Giga Triumph, right? Like, you're just going to keep topping allies off and stopping allies from dying just enough to get another kill to heal again. And so, yeah. In combination with all these buffs, though, that's the thing, they're reducing the mana cost on his Q and his W and his E. That's kind of an issue. I don't think Riot really realizes this one. So mana costs typically make a champion much stronger. Like if a champion doesn't go it makes him much stronger, especially if the champion is supposed to like Alistar. Alistar is not supposed to just Q, W, Q, W, Q, W. Like he's not just supposed to permanently peel champions. Like he is supposed to run out of mana eventually, right? And with him not running out of mana, that becomes a bit of an issue. So less mana, 15 less mana on his Headbutt, 5 less mana on his Pulverize, 20 less mana on his Late Game Trample. Like, this does buff him a lot, but it's not a fun buff. Not running out of mana isn't like fun, so to speak. Running out of mana isn't fun, but nobody has ever been like, oh man, I won that fight and I had more mana. Yay. Like no one's ever said that in their entire life. The other problem they're doing here is they're giga buffing his AP ratios. 0.2 AP ratio buff on his Q, 0.2 AP ratio buff on his W, and a 0.3 AP ratio buff on his trample. So the issue with this one is that this starts pushing AP Alistair top to be more viable. Now, AP Alistair top is like Gragas top, but 900 billion times more cancer. Now, these are really high AP ratios, just to be clear. This just means his QW alone gets a 0.4 AP ratio buff. This also means that his trample gets another 0.3 AP ratio buff. There's a 0.7 AP ratio buff in total. AP Alistair top is actually really, really bad for the game. It's extremely non-interactive. It completely neutralizes the lane. All you do is you just continuously headbutt away every melee champion, and if they jump on you, you pulverize and walk away. That's all you do with this pick. It's like Gragas with super aids attached to it. It's really bad for the game. So with a 0.9 AP ratio on his headbutt, I expect to see, I don't know if it'll be viable, but the mere fact that they're trying to bring it back is terrible. They should not be trying to bring back extremely cancer gameplay. The other thing is this does buff his bot lane because he does go with the AP item in the bot lane. So that just buffs his damage. And remember, they did nerf his damage because he was doing too much damage for how much CC he had. As a whole, these Alistair buffs are like giganormous, and I don't think Riot really realizes it. This isn't like a little bit of a buff of like oh yeah, Alistair is underperforming and we need enchanters to be worse, so we're going to buff Alistair. Like maybe you could buff Alistair a little, maybe you could have done this change, and maybe you could have done the mana changes. The AP changes the AP ratio changes or something. I'm gonna move on because I'm just focusing on Alistair here too much. So then we have Bram. Instead of Bram's passive scaling to level 13, it will now scale to level 11. So the target immunity duration on his stun will now be 4 seconds at level 11 instead of level 13. This means Bram throughout the game will be able to stun. Generally speaking, he'll be able to stun more often on people. The early game cooldown in his Q is going down. Instead of a 10 to 6 second cooldown, it'll be an 8 to 6 seconds. Then the amount of armor and magic resist he gets from his W is going from 10 to 26 to 20 to 40. So it's a pretty big buff to his W throughout the entire game. Q buff in the early game, and then a passive buff in the early game. So I think you can see my problem with the Alistair changes here, though, is that Alistair's getting like every aspect of his champion buffed. They're like healing buffed, mana cost buffed, damage buffed, buff. And then like with Bram, they're like, okay, let's make him and his allies a bit tankier and buff his early game a bit. But Bram is doing worse than Alistair. Bram cannot deal with poke meta. He can't. He doesn't have any healing for allies like Alistair does. Like Alistair can kind of sort of exist in a poke meta just because he can heal his ally and kind of keep them like, he can do something for them. But in poke meta, Bram does nothing. He sits back and he gets poked, and that's it. That's all he can do. I know Riot has him designed as supposed to be this like anti all-in tank, but I think it's good to try to like diversify a champion, if you know what I mean. Like make them more capable of dealing with more things rather than just being, Bram ain't beating all-in comp. Make him better at all-in. You know, it's like he's already decent at beating all-in comps. He's not amazing, but he's decent. He just can't exist against poke comps. So it's just not a good idea to balance that way. Nautilus, who was clearly underpowered and underperforming in every way. I don't think anyone was picking Nautilus. He was a very rare pick, very niche, only played by the best of best players in the entire world. No one could really bust out the sheer skill of Nautilus. So they're trying to, tune him up to make sure that these masters of gameplay can truly have a champion deserving of their skill level. So he's getting 6 more damage on his passive because Nautilus didn't really deal that much damage when you think about it. He tended to do very little damage. His W mana cost is going down and his shield strength is going up because Nautilus's damage and his damage and survivability in the early game weren't really that good. So, he needed a little bit of a bump there. Then his Riptide is getting buffed into the later ranks and its AP ratio is getting buffed. I'm not sure either, Kitty. I don't know what they're going with this one. I think they might be are they trying to bring like top Nautilus back? The thing is, in bot lane, Nautilus brings enough flat damage, enough burst, and enough survivability, and his Q is so broken that he can kind of just like engage and kill supports and ADCs pretty easily. But in the top lane, none of what I just said is true. In the top lane, what will frequently happen is a Darius or a Jax or any of those champions will just run up to him and ult in him and he dies because he doesn't have a teammate to kill people while he's seeing them. So I'm not really sure why they're buffing the AP ratio on his E. The only thing I can think of is they're trying to make the AP item feel better on him, but then that just buffs his damage. Maybe not that much, but it buffs it at all, right? Like even if he's doing like, let's say, even if all he gets is like 5 to 10 more damage on his Riptide, that's still not bad, right? So like 10 more damage here, 6 more damage here, 10 more survivability here. Like these add up. The only thing I think of is that Riot wanted Nautilus to be better. Maybe. I don't know. I don't think he was really a rare pick though. I mean, he's like a top 5 pick. I guess at the low ranks, he's not a top 5 pick. At the low ranks, he's number 7. But then by Challenger, he becomes the number 4 pick. I'm not going to talk about win rate because you don't ever really look at win rates in Challenger. They've got a low data set, right? But, he seems to be doing fine. You always need to make, like, it's like what I say. If a top 5 champion is being buffed, you're doing something wrong. Because a champion never gets into the top 5 just because people really, really like them. Top 5 champions always are good and playable. Otherwise, they wouldn't be top 5. Even mains will give up on their champion if they're not really doing that good. Okay? So I know these aren't as big as the other champions getting buffed, but you're really going to have to convince me Nautilus was underperforming and needed early game buffs. Pike is getting a buff to his Phantom Undertow. No buff at rank 1, but at rank 5, it's getting a 40 damage buff. They said they were doing some other buffs to Pike, but apparently that just went the way of the dodo. So here is the most problematic one, and I had to look this one up. Rakan is being buffed despite the fact that across every rank I've looked at, he has a positive win rate. His pick rate isn't that amazing, but his win rate at every single rank is positive, and it gets really good the higher rank you go. And they are giving this champion ginormous buffs. The cooldown in his Q is going down from 12 to 8 to 11 to 7. The mana cost is also going down from 60 to 45. So he'll be able to spam off his Q way more often, fishing to get hits to get a heal. Then the heal itself is getting buffed. 10 more healing at level 1. And then at level 18, that's going up to, 95 more healing. So 10 more healing at rank 1, 95 more healing at at level 18. So you'll be able to use more Qs due to a low mana cost, more Qs due to a low cooldown, and they'll heal for more. Then his W is getting its AP ratio buffed. It is getting its damage nerfed a little bit. So this seems to be the only time Riot is actually acknowledging that supports go with an AP support item. So its damage is being nerfed a little bit at rank 5 from 290 to 270, but its AP ratio is being buffed from 0.7 to 0.8. I'm not really sure why they're doing any of this, but they are. I'm a little afraid of these Rakan buffs because he was doing pretty decently. He wasn't popular. Rakan has never been a popular champion, but he seemed to be doing fine. And particularly, this makes his early game Q spam way more. He'll be able to aggressively spam it way more, right? And particularly until late game, that's just way more healing. I think for a champion that's supposed to be more of like a team fight oriented mid game champion, I'm not sure about that. It does seem to help him with poke comps more. So maybe if it was just the 10 flat and not the 95 at level 18, maybe I'd be more prone on that. Maybe if it was just the mana cost so he could spam it more. But the issue is that like against melee picks, he'll be able to use it way more often to keep himself topped off. And against like poke champions, he won't be able to use it as much. So if the buff they were doing, if like they wanted him to be able to like exist against poke comps more often, what they could have done is something like if they buff the range on his Q, maybe the target range is 900. If they buff that to 1,000, so he could try to like Q into a Zyra Ashe more. Like if they reduce the mana cost, the cooldown, not the healing, but they gave it a little bit more range, so he could like try to like hit longer range champions more and not just heal more against all-in comps. Because what they're doing right here is they seem to be just buffing him into all-in comps and buffing him into poke comps and buffing him overall. Rakan didn't really need a buff. I think he could have eaten a small buff and been fine, but the champion is doing fine. Thresh is having his survivability nerfed and his damage buffed, Why? Because durability update was a bad idea, question mark. So the amount of shield he gets per souls is going down because survivability bad, but the AP ratio and damage on his Q is going up because damage good, dopamine, then the AP ratio on his flay is also going up. Now he does get AP ratio per soul, so I think what they're trying to do here is that like make his souls more viable, so that like he'll do more damage with his souls, but they're nerfing his shielding with his souls, which is really suspect because this just leads to things like durability update. One of the biggest causes of durability update needing to happen was when supports started to actually start doing damage. It meant that supports went from basically no damage and just shielding and CCing to now they started to do not like a lot of damage, but like a good bit of damage, which power creeped the amount of damage in the game a lot. So I don't think Riot is making a good decision here at all, actually. That's all I have to say. I don't think Riot is making a good decision here. So the second thing is because, once again, every support has the AP support item. This means Thresh will just deal more damage baseline. So Thresh is just having his survivability nerfed and his damage buffed. Now, these aren't little ones. This is a 0.5 to a 0.8 AP ratio and a 0.4 to a 0.6 AP ratio. So his souls will do a lot more and the AP item will do a lot more. They're doing a tenacity update here, but I'm going to be honest, this basically doesn't impact anyone, so I'm going to skip over it. They're doing jungle adjustments, but instead of nerfing the jungle, they're just nerfing everybody. The gold per treat is going down. Instead of getting 30 gold per treat, we'll now get 20, but the amount of XP you get for clearing a large camp has been increased by 5. So it was originally going to be 10. They decreased it to 5 after people were like, why are you buffing the jungle? At this point, I don't know why they're buffing it at all, because 5 is basically not enough to really impact the game at all. It just seems they don't want to like admit that they're trying to nerf the jungle, so they're trying to give it a buff, which is just stupid to me. Just say, yes, the jungle was OP. The top 100 challenger was like half jungle mains in every region. Okay, so maybe just admit that and then just nerf the gold per treat and be like, yes, jungles are getting to their first item way too quickly. They have way too much gold. Why don't they just say that? But instead, they're like trying to give them this little buff here, and it will impact some games. So it's not like totally irrelevant, right? Like it will do something. So I don't know. Then they're reducing the cooldown in early game stealth ward trinkets. So right now there's a gap where you can place a ward and then it will die, and then the second ward won't come up quick enough. So you have to ward for either the level 2 gank or for the level 3 and 4 gank. So that's kind of an issue, in my opinion. Hopefully this change, I don't know if it does, but hopefully this change lowers that a little bit, where you can ward for the level 2 and the level 3 and 4 gank, so you don't have this weird thing where a jungler doing a full clear can just gank you because you were trying to ward for the level 3 gank. Like, oh, I'm warding for the level 1 and 3 gank from the jungler. Anyway, I should say the level 2 jungler gank and the level 3 jungler gank, but then the level 4 full clear jungler gank killed me because my ward died and I didn't get it back. Like, I hope I'm making sense. Basically, they did this nerf, like, was this like 8 years ago or some shit? And there's just always been this gap in warding, and it's been a huge complaint of mine for a while. I just kind of stopped. I kind of gave up complaining on it because Riot just seemed to like the idea that laners could not keep themselves safe from junglers. Right now, they just cannot. So this should also help you if you're like warding the brush against a ranged champion, so they can't just auto attack you, run on the brush to reset minion aggro over and over. So if you ward the brush, that should also have it on a lower cooldown, so you can get a anti-jungler ward. Wards as a whole are kind of at an all-time low of usefulness. With every jungler going sweepers and just sweeping through your ward and running through it, denying you the ability to even use your ward for its purpose, with ward pings giving everyone perfect knowledge of your ward so they can run through it. At this point, I've noticed a lot of people just kind of try to react to ganks by looking at what their opponent in lane is trying to do. A lot of people don't even try to ward for it anymore because wards just don't do much. They're saying here that they're trying to make wards more impactful for bot lane, especially so bot lane can avoid ganks. Bot lane does have 2 wards, obviously, because they get 2 trinkets. So the reduction in cooldown for bot lane will impact it more than mid and top lane. So this is definitely a good change for bot lane, and it's a good change to make bot lane no longer die. It's an opinion. I think the lifesteal rune should get 1% lifesteal at level 1. like just for choosing the rune. So like instead of 0 to 6%, it should be 1 to 6%. The reason for that is so ADCs can like recover from being poked more often. That would A, discourage poke meta, and B, that would discourage things like the jungler landed a few auto attacks on the ADC. Now they can't recover that health. Now they need it back. Now the opposing team gets a plate or two. Now the game's kind of over because one team comes back with quiver and one team comes back with double longsword, right? Like, it's way too easy to snowball bot lane right now because all ADCs are stat checks. Sorry, but it's true. Because all ADCs are stat checks, it just means whoever stat checks the other ADC better wins. So they're also buffing the amount of damage that turrets do because Riot thinks only junglers get hit by turrets. Riot really seems to have a main character syndrome when it comes to junglers. They think junglers are literally the only people in the game. If we buff turret damage, that will only impact the jungle. But what about top laners that are trying to like dive and all in, right? What about top laners that are poking each other under turret and only eating one turret shot? So you're telling me if I'm playing Aatrox or I'm playing K'Sante and I go in on like a Q poke and then I back out either through Aatrox healing or through K'Sante shielding, that now I just take 20 more damage? Why? Because the jungle was OP, I should now be less capable of winning my lane? We should have more 0 CS Malphites that just do nothing because now they can play even safer because the jungle was OP? I don't think so. They're also doing something where jungle companions can no longer deal lethal damage to epic monsters. I don't know how often this was occurring, but apparently it was enough. Clash update, competitive update. So basically, in normal and in blind pick and draft pick, normal surrenders is available after 15 minutes. So in blind and normal pick, you will now be able to surrender with 4 out of 5 at 15 minutes. Okay. Remove the warning in practice tool for staying in the fountain for too long. Yeah, whatever. So they have a lot of bug fixes here, but they have one in particular I'm very curious about, and I'll see. Fixed a bug that caused Kassadin's Q to grant him a shield even if the cast didn't complete. Let me look here for a second. Anyone who's still paying attention to this video, leave a comment if you are. But if anyone's still paying attention to this video, that's not a bug. I mean, there might be a bug that they're fixing here, but their wording of it isn't really good. Because the ability is supposed to give the shield at the start of cast, not at the end of cast. They literally patched that to be true. They literally have here, yeah, right here. New effect, shield is now granted on cast instead of soon as a missile is fired. So if the ability isn't going off, or if it's being canceled, if it's granting the shield still, if you go into a brush, that's the ability. The ability is still supposed to go off in that situation. It's granting the shield in that situation because it's supposed to grant the shield on cast. That's literally what they're saying here. At the start of cast, you're supposed to gain the shield. That was one of the changes they did to make him feel better to play. So I think the teams have a little bit of a disconnect here. They also have a few bugs. They have bug fix bashes here that are supposed to be like larger bug fixes. Rise can no longer regenerate mana by continuously walking on and out of the river with water walking. Fixed a bug that caused ally summoner spell ultimate indicators to show them as ready despite them actually being on cooldown. I don't think they'll actually fix this because they fixed this like 900 times. Fixed a bug where being rooted when attempting to issue attack move command caused the champion to be unable to auto attack. So this is a bug because what would frequently happen is you'd be rooted by Maokai, then you would right click away from like the Maokai, and then your character would bug out and then just attack Maokai because you're like, I can't move, might as well attack. So then what would frequently happen is Maokai or other champions would root you under turret, and then because you'd be clicking to move, you would instantly just attack the Maokai. Do you get it? And so yeah. Do you get it? So now, if you're rooted and you issue an attack move command, you will now attack. I don't know if that's a good idea or a bad idea, because it's probably good for game consistency, but it's probably a bad idea for the fact that it'll probably cause a lot of really frustrating situations where you're under a turret attacking the turret or something like that, and a Maokai roots you and you attack, like you're attacking a turret and then you click away from Maokai, but oh wait, you know, you did some sort of move and then he roots you and then you attack him instantly. Yeah. Blah 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 blah. Varus E and Gragas R are now destroyed by Yasuo's wind wall instead of activating their effects at the wind wall's location. There's a bunch of weird bugs here. Kog'Maw's passive had 5 less movement speed than was intended. Which, I mean, I guess it's a buff, technically. Some Kog'Maw players are going to be really buffed by that. Fixed a bug when Iceborn Gauntlet's damage reduction would not occur while shielded. I still think there's other bugs with Iceborn Gauntlet. Because when I look at its damage reduction, if I have 2,000, 3,000 HP, and I have Iceborn Gauntlet, and it's only given me like 40, 50 damage reduction over the course of a fight, there's something going wrong with that, because 10% damage reduction if I took 2,000 damage should equal, you know, like 200, but 99% of the time I only block like 40 damage. You'll frequently end the game with Iceborn Gauntlet with like 300 to 400 damage reduction, despite the fact you'll have 4,000 HP. Like, if all you do is proc Iceborn Gauntlet on a Jax and then he does 2,000 damage to you, you should get 200 damage reduction, but it's very frequent that you do not. So I think there's way more bugs going on here with Iceborn Gauntlet that aren't really being mentioned. So that's just my opinion, Riot. I think there's some really bad bugs going on here. None of these other bugs really look that impactful. As for upcoming skins, we have the Vine Caitlyn skin, I guess. We have the Amumu skin. Once again, yay. There's nothing really to say. These are just, to be honest, like these, I know what they're going for. They're like the Valentine's Day skins, but I just don't think, like, this is just teenage Caitlyn. It doesn't really look special. It literally just looks like a teenage Caitlyn. She looks really Asian, despite the fact she has a British accent. Vi. At least Vi's like a different look, I guess. I kind of like the shield things. I don't really know. It's just neither of these skins are like blowing my mind, I guess is my point. Even the Momo one is also, it's like, it's a Mumu. They're not really blowing my mind. I'm not really getting like a feel of like, oh my god, these are amazing skins. Holy crap. Like I'm not really getting that feeling from this. I'm kind of feeling like, yeah, it's okay. Like, I'm not saying it's bad. I'm not saying, like, by no stretch of the imagination am I saying this is bad. It's just, it's not blowing my mind. It's not doing anything for me, right? So, I'm going to read my Patreon people because we're at the end of this video, right? So, if you like these videos and you enjoy watching them, make sure to subscribe to my Patreon, and that helps me out immensely. My Patreon supporters are, give me 1 second to read through this, going from top to bottom based on their pledge tier. We have Armorian, Environmental Dust, Ezequiel Quavez, Harmless Scarecrow, Lord of Pudding, Monica, Stefan Ortman, Vape Lord Volnir, Deep the Heretic, Nicholas Hinderer, T the Fish, 3 and a Hook, Alex Strom, Alex Tennant, Alex 0_0, Emiru, Enthai, Blazenrock, Bleedmaster, Christoph Marks, Crash Pinho, Dion Desjole Willier, Fire Digger, Frog-Pilled Toadcell, Genny Shelbert, Granola, Greg RR, Guardian Lamartz, Horace the Burb God, Jason Miller, Joseph Stalin. Thank you, Joseph Stalin. Josiah Davila, Kokirli, Malice, Mao Runner, Mephisto, Nathaniel Ward, Nathan Mark Tarangoy, Nitro Muffin, Nuck Syrah, Nortgron, Not a Cultivator Zyra, Omar Nunez, Aniroy, Philemon Landry. I'm not having so many difficulties pronouncing these. I feel stupid as fuck right now. Quill of Anguish, Rai, Sarg Narg the Harj Narg, Harg, Schmoll, Sophisticated Fart. Stinky Ratman. Is there really 4 pages of this? How many pages? This can't be right. Huh. Stinky Ratman, Tenshi Kanashiza, Destroy, Used Car Salesman, William Egan, Yellow Chair, Sebastian. I feel like I'm doing these wrong. Something is wrong. I know some of these people aren't Patreon people anymore. Screw it. I guess we're just doing them. Whoever has ever subscribed to me. Something is wrong here, though. I think it's giving me the wrong list. I'm not really sure. Something is definitely... Oh, it is counting every person I've ever... Okay, hold on here. There we go. Okay, I knew I didn't have, like, that many. Okay, I'm going to go from the top to the bottom again. Something is... Okay, hold on. There we go. We're going to go for the top to the bottom again. I knew some of these people. I'm like, that's too many people. Okay, let me go. Top to the bottom again. Ezekiel Cuavez, Monica, Stefan Ortman, Deep the Heretic, Nicholas Hinderer, T the Fish, Alex Tennant, Blazon Rock, Christoph Marks, Crash Pino, Genny Shelbert, Horace Suburb God, Quill of Anguish, Tenchi Kanashisa, Destroy, Sebastian, Emzarine, Ben G, Creador, Dengda, Daniel Fiala, Daruda, Devin Jill, Yadgod, Eric Petanelli, Fanaku, Faluki, Hune Arthur, J. Paul, Justicier, Kalfal Zeramog, Kujibi, Ludwig III, Manuel, Madam Ann Morgan, Negative KDA, OMG Clover, Orhol Conite, Oz, RH, Red Addy, Scorpion, Stickbird 34, Suki 02, Terra, Tomato, Under, Uva Plaja, Violin, Vivian, Wilbur S, Wolf God, Wolfman, Adam Golding. Thank you everyone for being on my Patreon. Sorry that took so long. Everyone else, thank you for being a YouTube member. If you guys are YouTube members, I appreciate you guys a lot. Thank you if you just make it this far in the video. Thank you for liking. Thank you for leaving a comment. I read all your comments. Yay! So thank you guys for leaving those. Thank you guys for getting this late in the video. And as always, I hope all of you have a great day. Goodbye, everybody.